start again. October 6th, Ezra and the second return down to Israel. And what's interesting here, just as a reminder about Ezra, is he's considered a scribe. And we're going to find out some things in today's text that really set up what scribes are and what they become into the future based on what happens in this particular passage of study. And part of the reason why when Jesus was kind of confronted by the scribes, why it was they even thought they had, the authority to be confronting someone like Jesus, comes out of this text right here. And because scribes, all scribes were up until this moment were, glorified kinkos. They just copied words, right? It was just they were the copy machine. So it's like, up until this moment in the Israelite history, a scribe only specifically was there to write down words. And I don't know which way you get to see me writing, but they wrote words, and then they count the words and measure the page, and essentially work to make sure that all the words and all the letters were exactly right on a page. That was their job. That was all the scribe did until this moment. At this moment, the role of the scribe shifted, and they ultimately, if you read out of the New Testament, sometimes it'll say that the lawyer confronted Jesus. The word for lawyer would have been the word for scribe, which was translated lawyer into the English, which comes out of this idea of a scribe with now legal authority. And so now there's a new legal authority that gets bestowed on the scribes. And so we're going to see where that comes from. It's very interesting. Watch what happens here. Now, Ezra, the second return. In fact, Malachi prophesied during the prior 40 to 60 years, he paved the way for a time of renewed interest in the law and in the work of the two men whose joint leadership brings about a time of religious reform. It happens during the reign of Artaxerxes, who took over the Persian rule before the death of his father in 465 BC. Like Xerxes' final years, Artaxerxes' reign is also troublesome, with revolts quelled in Egypt and Greece, where his father had been so insensitive. Now remember, Artaxerxes, Xerxes, both of them had pagan kings. They worship a plurality of gods. There's not like a sense of, boy, the gods of the Hebrews are my God. It's just one more of the gods of the peoples with whom I've conquered, which is also where we get the term King of Kings. King of Kings is a reflection of a king who has conquered other kings. So we'll see that in the text in a little bit. But Artaxerxes' reign is also troublesome, with revolts to be quelled in Egypt and Greece, where his father had been so insensitive. It is somewhat surprising then that any attempt by the Jews to strengthen their own nation would not be viewed with more suspicion. However, it may well be that Artaxerxes sees Israel as a peaceful nation, minding its own business, and geographically suited to be a buffer against Egypt if sufficiently redeveloped. Therefore, Artaxerxes actually promotes further development of Israel, and particularly promulgation of its unique laws, which he greatly admires. With Artaxerxes' blessing, a great teacher of the law named Ezra, along with a company of over 1,500 Jews, leaves Babylon. That's where you get to, Todd, explain those. Who are those 1,500 Jews? They leave Babylon in 458 BC to the second contingent of Jews to return to Palestine since the exile. After the rushed 4 months trek, that's a long journey. They have to travel. Keep this in mind as we're talking about what they have to do. It's a 4-month journey. They arrive in Jerusalem with more treasure for the temple service and the ongoing redevelopment project. After these things, chapter 7, after these things, during the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra, son of Zariah, the son of Ezariah, the son of Hilkiah, the son of Shallum, the son of Zadok, the son of all these guys. Now look at this. And all these names, I'm not going to read all this. He is all there just to demonstrate one thing, that he ultimately traces his lineage back to the son of Aaron. So he is in the lineage, the line of Aaron, the chief priest. So he identifies his particular lineage as going back to this former chief priest. This Ezra is the one that comes up from Babylon. He was a teacher, well versed in the law of Moses, for which the Lord, the God of Israel, had given. So he knows the law, he's paid attention to the law, he's studied the law, his heart actually leans towards the law. The king had granted him everything he asked, for the hand of the Lord, his God, was on him. Some of the Israelites, including priests and Levites and musicians and gatekeepers and temple servants, also came up to Jerusalem in the 7th year of King Xerxes. This is a copy of the letter King Xerxes had given to Ezra the priest, a teacher of the law, a man learned in matters concerning the commands and decrees of the Lord for Israel. Xerxes, king of kings, again, a king that has conquered other kings, to Ezra the priest, the teacher of the law of God of heaven, greetings.
Now I declare that any of the Israelites in my kingdom, including priests and Levites, who volunteered to go to Jerusalem with you may go. You are sent by the king and his 7 advisors to inquire about Judah and Jerusalem with regard to the law of your God, which is in your hand. Moreover, you are to take with you the silver and the gold that the king and his advisors have freely given to the God of Israel, whose dwelling is in Jerusalem, together with all the silver and gold you may obtain from the province of Babylon, as well as the freewill offerings of the people and priests for the temple of their God in Jerusalem. With this money, be sure to buy bulls, rams, and male lambs, together with their grain offerings and drink offerings, and sacrifice them on the altar of the temple of your God in Jerusalem. You and your fellow Israelites may then do whatever seems best with the rest of the silver and gold. I wish Bruce would tell me that. In accordance with the will of your God, deliver to the God of Jerusalem all the articles entrusted to you for worship in the temple of your God. Wow. And anything else needed for the temple of your God that you are responsible to supply. You may provide from the royal treasury. Now I, King Xerxes, decree that all the treasures of Transurethites are to provide with diligence whatever Ezra the priest, the teacher of the law of the God of heaven, may ask of you, up to 100 talents of silver, 100 cores of wheat, 100 baths of wine, 100 baths of olive oil, and salt without limit. Wherever the God of heaven has prescribed, let it be done with diligence for the temple of the God of heaven. Why should his wrath fall on the realm of the king of his sons? I'm so sorry. You are also to know that you have no authority to impose taxes, tribute, or duty on any priest, Levites, musicians, gatekeepers, or temple servants, or other workers at this house of God. And you, Ezra, in accordance with the wisdom of your God, which you possess, appoint magistrates and judges to administer justice to all the people of the Transurethites. All who know the law of your God, and you are to teach any who do not know them. Whoever does not obey the law of your God and the law of the king must surely be punished by death, banishment, confiscation of property, or imprisonment. Praise be to the Lord, the God of our ancestors, who has put it to the king's heart to bring honor to the house of the Lord in Jerusalem in this way, and who has extended his good favor to me before the king and his advisors and all the king's powerful officials. Because the hand of the Lord my God was on me, I took courage and gathered leaders from Israel to go up with me.
I assembled them at the canal that flows toward Ahava, and we camped there for 3 days. When I checked among the people and the priests, I found no Levites there. So I summoned Eleazar, Ariel, Shemaiah, Elnathan, Jarib, Elnathan, Nathan, Zechariah, and Meshullam, who were leaders, and Joarib and Elnathan, who were men of learning, and I ordered them to go to Iddo, the leader in Casiphia. I told them what to say to Iddo and his fellow Levites, the temple servants in Casiphia, so that they might bring attendance for us to the house of the Lord, our God. Because the gracious hand of our God was on us, they brought us to Sherebiah, a capable man from the descendants of Mali, son of Levi, the son of Israel, and Sherebiah's sons and brothers, 18 in all, and Hashabiah, together with Jesaiah, from the descendants of Merari, and his brothers and nephews, 20 in all. They also brought 220 of the temple servants, a body that David and the officials had established to assist the Levites, and all were registered by name. There by the Ahava canal I proclaimed a fast, so that we might humble ourselves before our God and ask him for a safe journey for us and our children with all our possessions. I was ashamed to ask the king for soldiers and horsemen to protect us from the enemies on the road, because we had told the king, the gracious hand of our God is on everyone who looks to him, but his great anger is against all who forsake him. So we fasted and petitioned our God about this, and he answered our prayers. Then I set apart 12 of the leading priests, namely Sherebiah, Hashabiah, and 10 of their brothers, and I weighed out to them the offering of silver and gold and the articles that the king, his advisors, his officials, and all Israel present there had donated for the house of our God. I weighed out to them 650 talents of silver articles weighing 100 talents, 100 talents of gold, 20 bowls of gold value at 1,000 derricks, and 2 fine articles of polished bronze as precious as gold. I said to them, you as well as these articles are consecrated to the Lord. The silver and gold are a freewill offering to the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Guard them carefully until you weigh them out in the chambers of the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, before the leading priests and the Levites and the family heads of Israel. Then the priests and Levites received the silver and gold and sacred articles that had been weighed out to be taken to the house of our God in Jerusalem. On the 12th day of the first month, we set out from the Ahava canal to go to Jerusalem. The hand of our God was on us, and he protected us from enemies and bandits along the way. So we arrived in Jerusalem, where we rested 3 days. Ezra arrived in Jerusalem in the 5th month of the 7th year of the king. He had begun his journey from Babylon on the 1st day of the 1st month, and he arrived in Jerusalem on the 1st day of the 5th month, for the gracious hand of his God was on him. For Ezra had devoted himself to the study and observance of the law of the Lord, and to teaching its decrees and laws in Israel. Now these are the family heads and those registered with them who came up with me from Babylon during the reign of King Artaxerxes. And so here we run into these 1,500 of these descendants and the families, and rather than go through and read all the names, if we count all these up, we should come up with about 1,500 people in all, but I'm not going to do the math. So we'll pick up here accounting and sacrifice. On the 4th day in the house of our God, we weighed out the silver and gold and the sacred articles into the hands of Meremoth, son of Uriah, the priest. Eleazar, son of Phinehas, was with him, and so were the Levites Jozabad, son of Jeshua, and Noadiah, son of Binnui. Everything was accounted for by number and weight, and the entire weight was recorded at that time. Then the exiles who had returned from captivity sacrificed burnt offerings to the God of Israel, 12 bulls for all Israel, 96 rams, 77 male lambs, and as a sin offering, 12 male goats. All this was a burnt offering to the Lord. They also delivered the king's orders to the royal satraps and to the governors of Trans-Euphrates, who then gave assistance to the people and to the house of God.
Such a cool passage. So I don't know if you guys caught that when the king was giving his directives, he gives authority. He gives royal authority to this scribe Ezra, and even so much so that he gives them free pass on not having to pay taxes. He gives them authority that people don't obey the commands of God, that he has legal authority to imprison and or the king's commands. If you don't obey God's commands or the king's commands, Ezra has authority to imprison. He's got this new role of authority that gets bestowed on him by this pagan king that forever and ever then the scribes decided really was theirs. And so kind of an amazing moment in the transition. But he also uniquely comes out of that priestly line. And so there was a sense that now scribes after him, and in the spirit of what he winds up doing and creating, he creates a new precedence where the scribes from this point on through the life of Christ now have a role of authority in the land, of teaching in the land, of priestly activities in the land in some measure. And so it's kind of an interesting thing that happens in transitions right there that really affords those scribes and lawyers to come at Jesus as not being someone who is living up to their law or their understanding of the law. Another thing that I just want to kind of look and reflect on from just towards the end of my reading is something here in verse 10. And it's not as clear in the text that we read, so I just want to kind of underscore it because I think it's so incredibly valuable for us. Ezra did a few things. He devoted himself, this is the NIV, he devoted himself to the study, and he devoted himself to the study and observance of the law of the Lord. Then he also devoted himself not just to the study and observance of the law, but to the teaching of its decrees. I like how it's written even better in the ESV because it's more accurate to the Hebrew translation. For Ezra, set his heart, because right, I mean we know it really is always a matter of the heart, right? Ezra set his heart to three things. He set his heart to the study of the law of the Lord. He set his heart to the teaching of the statutes and the rules of Israel. And then we see that he set his heart to doing it. So there was I want to study it, I want to teach it, and then he goes on through the text to demonstrate that I want to do it. And I think that is really, really awesome and kind of worthy of our attention. And so there's a study of the law, which I love that we're doing that, a teaching of the law, and then a doing of the law. And the one spot where I saw this kind of really flesh out, Todd, was at the beginning of your reading. So I got to go past that. Where did it's right in here in chapter 8, verse 21 through 23. I think is the seminal paragraph in our study today. So look at all the gold he's got, right? I mean, he's got a lot. They're going to travel for 4 months. They're on a 4-month journey. Back in those days, not unlike our days, you go walking around with this kind of gold in your pocket, and you're kind of inviting bandits, right? And I love that all the people that are with him are like, Ezra, you've kind of got the king in your pocket. I mean, he has opened up the treasury to you. What do you say you go back and talk to the king again and get us an armed regiment?
Right.
This is the king's wealth. I mean, certainly the king would want to protect his wealth and make sure it gets down to Jerusalem for the building. I mean, if he's given it to us, wouldn't he give us, maybe 100 men or 500 men, or would he provide us with safe passage? And Ezra's like, Yeah, I'm not feeling like that would be what I want to do. I'm ashamed to ask for that because I already explained that my God's got this. I think this is really an interesting point because I think that a lot of times, and the question for me is, you know, I mean, this is really one of congruence, right? It's an issue of congruence. If I live my life believing that God can and does take care of, but then I live it in my mind in one way, but my actions in a different way, it's incongruent. There's a place where the two things aren't fitting together. And he's saying, I would be embarrassed to have my life not demonstrate in my actions what my beliefs and what my words have said. That there's something about the way I've lived my life in front of the King with words about who God is, that I can put my trust in him. So what we're going to do, rather than go to the King, is we're going to pray and we're going to fast and we're going to trust God. We're going to make our petition to God. We're going to trust in God. We're going to pray to God. We're going to believe in God that God can take care of this. And as it turns out, he ends that little paragraph by, we fasted and we petitioned our God about this, and God answered us. And so rather than kind of a telescope, a long view, then we then get a microscope, and he goes back and shows now through the text kind of in microscopic fashion how it is that God does that, how he does take care of them through this traveling. What's great about this whole story for me, and I don't know what you guys think about this, is just the necessity, and I think it begs the question to me, is does my life reflect this kind of confidence to live words and action that are in parallel? And I think that's pretty powerful.
Mark, just a quick question on that too. When he said he was ashamed, was that different? I mean, I think of the word ashamed, and I think, you know, was he embarrassed? Is ashamed translated from something else? Because certainly his actions were of faith, right? I mean, the fasting and the praying and all that. But when he says, "I was ashamed,"
yeah, he would be ashamed to let his words and his actions be incongruent.
Okay.
That I would be ashamed to say my God's got this, and then act as if my God doesn't got this.
Right.
I would be ashamed to live my life saying my marriage matters, and then act like my marriage doesn't matter. I would be ashamed to say that generosity matters, and then not live generously. I would be ashamed to say that my God can meet my needs, and then try to steal from my neighbor. It's that I would be ashamed to live in a way that is incongruent with the faith that I've declared. I love that. I think it begs the question, God, am I ashamed of the things that I should be ashamed of, or do I live my life like I'm ashamed of you? I think it's a great question. And it brings up to this point here. First question in our study is, what are we most devoted? What do we find our hearts devoted to?
I think sometimes we find ourselves caught up in ruts, and we are devoted to our work, or we're devoted to our family, our children, our spouse, our home, and not devoted to what is the most important. We let God come second because we get too caught up in what we're doing, and we don't foster that relationship to be first. And we get too devoted to other things that maybe didn't start out that way. Maybe you started out doing something good, but then you got too devoted to it.
Yeah, it's a very convicting question, and Chris answered in a way that I was thinking too in the chat. If folks haven't read it, the first question is super tough. The answer should be Jesus, but unfortunately, this world tells you that it should be your family, your job, and yourself. And really, unfortunately, I think, and I agree with you, Anna. It's so easy to get caught up. And I would probably say that I might say one thing, but it might look more like I'm more devoted to myself. Book I read a long time ago was written. I don't know if people are any football fans, but a running back by the name of Gale Sayers with the Chicago Bears, phenomenal running back in his day, wrote a book, and the name of the book was I Am Third, and it was about his faith, and his priorities were the Lord is first, my friends are second, and I am third. And that was the framework of the book. And boy, isn't that great? I mean, to me, it's like, yep, there's a level of priority in that. Mm-hmm. And I think, and maybe we'll talk in question number 2. How do you change those? How do you become third? What are the steps that need to be taken to cause that to happen?
Yeah, there's been a movement in recent years called I Am Second, based on that same premise. Like, God's first, everything else is second, right? Everything else is second. Let's just make it more simple, because 3 is like too complicated, evidently, for us Christians in our day. So, that was more of a 70s thing. And now that we're in today's world, we can't keep track of 3 things. So let's get it down to 2, right? I think that was the mindset. But if you go to the Google happens to know all kinds of things, but look up I Am Second. There is a ton of really great video testimonies about people trying to live their lives putting God first, and it's really super powerful. But when I think about this moment in time, and it happens it happens cyclically. Let me just say that. It happens cyclically, but it happens maybe. It seems like maybe this year. Maybe not. Maybe it's like this all the time. But it seems like this year again, we are consumed. We are consumed in the church with the necessity to be right about our politic, and and I look at Xerxes and Artaxerxes, and I just wonder what would happen if we just really, really trusted that, if Trump is reelected, could God do some amazing things in this country? Or if Biden is elected, could God still use the king? I mean, these kings are puppets to our great God. We ought to put our faith and confidence not in the puppet. Let's put our faith and confidence in the puppet master and say, God, we trust you. We're going to love you. We are not going to allow who people are excited about dissuade us from loving one another. What would happen if we started to get on the side of, I'm going to have confidence in God. I'm going to have a position. And I'm going to vote, because that's good. We're a democracy. We're a republic. We have an opportunity to participate in politics. Incredible, awesome, and we should have a position. But when our position begins to divide us, and we forget that above all of these people that we're caring about so much sits a God who is sovereign in history, maybe we're allowing our positions to sabotage our true interests. And maybe we're allowing our positions to sabotage his interests in how we live our lives, demonstrating the love we have for one another, that others would look in at and say, wait a second, there's something uniquely different about the way this community lives, about this way the community cares for each other, about the way this community allows people inside of it to have a variety of opinions. Maybe I could even be cared for here. Maybe I could even find truth here. And we, rather than that, we dispatch a position that is really, really tough for those of a different position to embrace or to swallow or to to recognize that they could in fact be loved in our community. And we are so divided that we have sabotaged our unity for the sake of our own position about the rightness of our understanding of who should lead us. It's incredible. It's incredible. And it betrays the virtue of the Holy Spirit dwelling within us and God's sovereignty over kings, or our belief in that, So again, it's just a call on our lives, I think, to seasonally reflect on that reality when we come into these political seasons, to go, wait a second, my God is sufficient to meet my needs. I trust him. He's sufficient to meet our country's needs. I trust him. And I'm going to have a position, but I'm going to trust him. So how can you change your spiritual habits to become more devoted to God? Well, you're singing to the choir, so this is a softball.
You get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you get a cup of coffee and you come onto this study. That's what you do. If this doesn't get your priorities right, then nothing will.
And if you get here early, you get to see Anna making out with Bruce. It's like a PG-13 at least. I mean,
it's honestly, a bonus. Yeah, it's there's always a bonus.
you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. I liked what Jenny said when Jenny Pearson said inviting God into everything that you do. And, I kind of said this last time too, we make it so difficult when it really is so simple. When you have a relationship, if you want it to be fruitful, you work on it, just like a relationship with your children or coworkers or your spouse, you work on that relationship. And that's the same thing with God. When you want a strong relationship with him, a fruitful relationship, stop it. You have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get on here so that you can learn more about him. It's a relationship that you have to work on and invite him into every aspect of your life so that he's first and not an afterthought.
Let's look at that fourth question. What does this story reveal about God's protection of his people?
He does. He will. But like you talked about earlier, Mark, that Ezra made that decision for them to call a timeout, to fast and to pray and to do those things. Actively seeking, just like what we're talking about, actively seeking him. He's more than capable of protecting us. More than capable. We got to turn to him.
Anna?
I agree. I love where he says that he was ashamed to ask for the protection because he was already saying and living his life in a manner that he believed God would be there. And so that faith was just not able to be broken. And so I really liked that part about of that he lived out exactly what he was saying. And so that protection was there because the faith was there.
It's easy for us to talk about, I believe God will protect me and I believe
he'll take care of my family. But to live it out like this man did and have all of those people under him, the people that were traveling with him, and say, he's got all of us. I'm strong enough into that to say that he's going to protect every one of us, to me is just incredible.
Todd, why don't you pray us out today?
Yeah, thanks. God, once again, I thank you for the opportunity to come before you. And Lord, to really spend a little bit of time today looking at priorities. And my prayer today is that as we leave this study, that we would examine our lives, we would examine our day, and look to reprioritize if things are out of balance, if they're out of order, Father, that we do make sure to put you first as we enter into those who are on the way to work today, that as we go about our day, work, whatever it happens to be, that we would seek you first, that we would look to follow your lead, Father, in all things. And thank you also for Mark's reminder that, Father, you can use us, you can use anyone to further your kingdom. And I just pray that you would use us this day. Father, I thank you so much for all that you give to us. I just ask your blessings on each and every one of us, Lord. Continue to look after our nation, because we are in a time that we desperately need that, Lord. And so I give this day to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, you guys have a great day. Pray the
Thanks for
Lord's
joining us.
blessing upon you. Bye.
See ya. Bye.